Monday nights are so much more fun around Last Second Sports because, well, one, we have a show. Two, I've got the coach with me every Monday. Looking so forward to this show. And tonight's show is about a week in the making. Coach and I said this many times, but Coach and I talk daily for long periods of time as we go on our walks, 3-4 miles at a time, what have you. And we're always talking 49er football. This topic today and what we found, I think, is pretty interesting. It's a peek behind the curtain into Kyle Shanahan, maybe some of the things that have always been there. What can he change? What has he already worked on? Those types of things. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the defensive coordinator spot, or who the hell is going to be the defensive coordinator. Shocked that a defensive coordinator hasn't been hired yet. That being said, we're going to do all of it. And we're going to do it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, it's Monday night, so I got my guy Coach with me. What's up, Coach?
What up? What's good, Jess? How you doing? Feeling good, man. Like, we got the off season ahead of us, and we're in a real sweet spot right now, right? Like, we're right ahead of the new league year. We got all of these draft picks and all of this other stuff coming up as far as free agency, new salary cap. But I feel like right now there's an element that's happening on teams all around the league, and it's self-scout. Right now it's self-scouting. Right now you get to go back and self-scout the scheme. You get to look at all of the blunders from the season. You get to look at all of the things that you had to just shelf in the season because you had to push on. So if there was ever a time to go back and be retrospective, now's the time.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with that. And that's exactly what we're going to do with Kyle Shanahan. However, before we get to that point, we've got to talk about the defensive coordinator position. Mm-hmm. I don't know how shocked you are. I'm pretty shocked. I thought the defensive coordinator would be in place by now. I really did. I thought it would happen by the end of last week. You got the combine coming up, and it hasn't. So what we do know is, and Mayoko finally put out something, so we now know for a fact who has been interviewed, who they plan on interviewing. One of them was Staley, who's outside of the organization, just recently off of being the Chargers head coach. Another one is Sorensen, who's the passing game coordinator, defensive coordinator here. And we know that Daniel Bullocks is going to be interviewed later in the week. As far as we know, those are the only three names that we've been made aware of, at least. So what the hell's taking them so long? I mean, two of these guys are in-house, and one of them hasn't had a job since before the season ended. What the heck?
Well, I mean, if we're going to look at just face value, they're still looking, right? Let's go half glass full first, right? They're still looking. They understand what they don't want, right? That's the beauty of firing a coach, quite honestly, is that you know exactly what you need, right? You're fresh off of an experience where it needed to be calibrated so much so that you were willing to move on after less than a year of having the man in the building. So they know what they want and they know what they don't want, which means that they curated their list to exactly the style and the abilities of the coaches that they want. So that's half glass full. Half glass empty is they've swung and they've missed on the number one choices that they want, and the top tier of choices that they want. And now they're moving on to their second tier of choices. And that is finally rolling out as far as the interviews that we're starting to hear about with Nick Sorensen and already with Brandon Staley. And next up is what's old boy the other guy, the inside guy, Bullocks, right? Yeah. So the way I see it is it's tiered, right? If I'm looking at all of the hoopla and the buzzing around, and you can honestly tell that there were some serious names that were up for selection because you started hearing chirping from Tim Kawakami. Then we started hearing some other reports from guys that were starting to sniff around the Niners. So you already knew that the tea leaves were going, but I feel like we kind of went 0 dark 30 for a little while. There was like radio silence. And in my opinion, I kind of feel like we go through this every year. And it's not necessarily with quarterbacks, but it's with anybody that there's a rumor that the Niners are trying to go get. And isn't it a coincidence that every time there was an opportunity for the Niners, right, to acquire somebody or bring them in their organization, the Niners said no, right? Mm-hmm. The Niners were the ones who always said, no, well, we don't want Tom Brady. No, we don't really want Kirk Cousins. Vic Fangio, take a hike. We don't want Vic Fangio. And the truth is that nobody really looks at it from the other side of it is that, well, who told the Niners no, right? Who turned us down? And I tend to believe that if you just look at like the context of it, right? If you're going to go after your whale, right? If you're going to go after Bill Belichick, that's your guy, right? You're going to wrap that up the right way, right? It's the same thing about recruiting, man. Like when you are recruiting, when I coached at Bowie State, man, and when you recruited, you didn't wait until the end of the recruiting cycle to finally go get that 4-star that you thought you can go get. No, we're taking all of our assets, head coaches coming, we're bringing the AD, maybe a pastor or two, and we're going to do everything we can to go get our guy. And we're going to make him feel like he's a priority. So Bill Belichick being, class personified for all of the things that we know, right? You don't make Bill Belichick your second, third, or fourth choice, right? And you damn sure don't let reports come out that you've interviewed. I mean, God love him. Brandon Staley, amazing guy. I mean, who am I? Right? Right? Like, let me check myself at the door. Right? Nick Sorensen, amazing NFL career. Who the hell am I? I'm chopped liver. I'm a nobody. I'm sure he's a great coach. But there ain't no fucking way that them dudes are getting the interview before Bill Belichick. No way. So with that said, there could have been a possibility that the top tier, in my opinion, was Ulbrich, Mike Vrabel, Gus Bradley, and Bill Belichick. Let's say that was the top cream of the crop. And they probably gave the Niners a look. Looked at looked at some of the hard boundaries that we had. Possibly we could say, hey man, we'll get rid of the DBs, but Holland stays, Kocurek stays, or hey man, Kocurek can go, but you got to run our defense. Or, I just don't see the Niners completely coming in belly up, right? Which you would need to do. And I can feel like some of those guys came through the organization, talked to Kyle, and quite possibly told us thanks, but no thanks, right? Like not only is this is the thing, like from a fan standpoint, yes, any coach would want to coach this team, but there's a caveat to that. Any coach with nothing to lose would want to coach this team. You see what I'm saying? Wilkes was in a precarious situation where he really didn't have anything to lose. He had already been ousted 2 years in a row from 2 different teams and quite bad. And it was kind of like, well, what else can I do? I'm next to the biggest team in the league. They're known for the compository pick situation. Like, what's the worst that can happen? So he had to be here. I kind of feel the same way about Brandon Staley. Like, I'm not impressed by that move whatsoever. In my opinion, he's the defensive Kyle Shanahan. So I don't like, that's how I feel.
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah. So I tend to kind of think that the reason it's taken this long, I mean, look at Wilkes last year. He was hired, I think, on February 7th. I know they didn't make it to a Super Bowl, but basically as soon as they could hire somebody, they did.
They got one in.
They did the same thing with DeMeco Ryans. I think he was mid-January or something after they had, lost, the season was over. So they make these decisions pretty quick. If you have 2 in-house guys and then Staley, and that's your coaches that you're interviewing, Staley was fired before the season was over. So he's been available. these two in-house guys obviously available. That
Mhm.
tells me they likely, I'm sure they didn't actually interview those other guys. They just reached out. Are you interested? Would you
Mhm.
come here? What would it take? And maybe those guys were like, hey, I got to talk to my family. Let me do some kicking around. They started asking people around the league and did their due diligence. And for whatever
Mhm.
reason, decided, no, not for us or not for
Right.
me. And so that's what I think has taken so long. And now that we've gotten to this point where the people that they probably really wanted, which are the big name guys, said, we politely decline. And the 49ers are back to regular DC hires, which I think the signs always pointed to somebody in house. Daniel Bullocks was
Mhm.
my guy. And maybe it does end up being Staley, but Staley is underwhelming, man. I mean, Staley, what was he, a DC for 1 year in the COVID year? Am I
Yeah,
mistaken? I
I'm
think
not.
that's the only year.
I'll bring it up. I'm not impressed by Coach Staley, and another thing that I wanted to bring up about that too, if we do go with Staley, is that we're kind of really playing around with our chi, so to speak, as far as like our team motivation and how we're built. For better or for worse, say what you want about Coach Wilkes, but he did his best D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh impression this year. I mean, as far as like being on the sideline, being a rah-rah guy, trying his best to rally the guys, being talkative. I mean, he did everything but go bald. Like he tried his best. And for better or for worse, I do give him credit in that regard from being a coach that is completely the opposite. I feel like he's definitely a guy that's going to let you know how he feels and he's a straight talker, especially, in a practice element and in the meeting room. But, him kind of like being outside of his frame, it just doesn't seem like that's like his character. Well, take that and triple it with Brandon Staley. I mean, you want to talk about no charisma, like no body of emotion, like absolutely no pulse at times. I mean, dude, there are times where like I can recall times where it was literally burning down around there. And he was like standing around with a pleasant smile on his face. Like, I'm gonna tell you, bro, like I think, and then on top of it is that um I just don't think that he will be a culture fit. I think he's a little too timid, to be honest with you.
Can I pose something as well?
Yeah.
So he was a DC during the COVID year on the Rams under McVay. Did they not have a DC opening this offseason? And why was he not considered for that if he's so good? The-
That's a bar. That's a bar.
right?
That's
I mean, if
fire.
if he's
Yeah.
if he's so good, why would McVay not bring him back or ask him to come back? And as far as I know, there were no interviews done. I'll have to reach out to my guy Jake. He really knows the team inside and out and make sure I'm not missing something. But if they didn't even reach out, that's a little concerning.
I just I kind of feel like even for what he's done defensively, I think in 22, his run defense, this is what we need right now. We need a reclamation project on our depth up front. I'm just on the defensive side. We need a reclamation project on our depth up front and being able to stop the run, right? And Brandon Staley, if my memory serves me correctly, in 2022, his run defense ranked 28th in the league. And then just this past season, they were dead smack in the middle at 17th in the league in run defense. So it's like, I don't know how to get the math ain't mathing. Like, how is he like, all right, even if he's a DC choice, get it, ex-head coach, you can kind of like prop this up and make it look like something. I see what they're doing. But once you get down to like the meat and the potatoes of it, it's like he's bland. He hasn't really done anything exceptional defensively. On top of the fact that he hasn't done anything exceptional defensively with a good defense. They got some dogs over there. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's average guys over there and he was just toiling away, making it happen. Like Ulbrich is talented because he is shown to not only be a good judge of talent and like elevate guys into household names, but he did it with a defense that he had to build from the ground up, and they were good along the way. Like they never sucked. With the Chargers, This is why I feel like Brandon Staley is Kyle Shanahan on the defensive side. They're loaded. And they always put everything on that side of the ball. And that's where he's from. And he's very creative, right? He's ridiculously creative. But what happens is that when an offense adjusts to the Chargers, Brandon Staley cannot adjust with an offense. He cannot, especially on the ground. And I feel as though that we can get somebody who's a little bit more galvanized around their career. I just don't see him. I don't see him as a hot pick for our guys. Like if Wilkes wasn't enough, I don't think this guy's going to be enough.
I think it has to be somebody in house at this point. Based on our scenario, at least they swung and missed, right? At least they tried, because the reason we think it's taking so long, or at least the reason I think it's taking so long, you laid out both scenarios, and I think you agree with me on this one, but seems like the reason it took so long is because they probably did reach out to the Bill Belichick's and some of those other guys, and they just weren't able to make it happen, likely because those guys didn't want to. It's because those guys wouldn't have wanted to come here. It's not the other way around. If you reached out, you wanted them here, they didn't want to be here for whatever reason. And
the infrastructure is here for them to be here. If they wanted to be here, they'd be here.
Exactly. So for me, I believe they at least tried, and you got to give them credit for that. But here we are with what we thought it was always going to be, which was likely somebody in house, maybe Staley, which I didn't see coming, but that one doesn't get me excited. So anyways,
yeah, I'm not moved.
All right, let's get through these super chats. Then let's get into this Kyle Shanahan stuff, because it's going to carry the rest of the show. There's a lot of reading I'm going to have to do, so bear with us, but I think it's well worth it. And Dave Barclay says, "My guys, how are you two tonight?" Very good, Dave. Brother Bob says, "My guys, Nails and Coach Belichick and Carroll said F you." All right. Brother Bob says, "Why work for Kyle Levy if you're a proven better head coach?" Oh, geez. Dave Barclay says, "Brother Bob, coaches flee our team. Who's next?" Brother Bob says, "Dave, they are my guys. Pause. How are you, bro?"
Are they talking to each other in the chat?
Always good, BB. Life is good. Hope the same for you. Brother Bob says, "Dave, I'm hoping Kyle Levy is next to flee." All right, Bucket of Chicken comes in, which is always interesting that a Bucket of Chicken can always find a way to send super chats, but he does. Yes. Kyle said he's open to changing up the scheme, but that would also mean a change in personnel. I don't see that happening. Need someone to run the wide nine. Not necessarily even a change in personnel, but also a change in the whole coaching staff. And if it's going to be somebody that changes the scheme, it's going to be somebody he fully trusts. And that's why I think those big names, the Belichicks, the Vrabels, he'd listen. But somebody else is not going to.
Let me ask you this, just to kind of like piggyback on Bucket of Chicken's point. Are we capable of pivoting? Can we pivot? Like, I understand that we're talented, right? And we look a certain way. And this is something that I was all right. So I had a gig, right? An ad hoc gig where I was doing some scouting for a college team, right? And they were really good. All right. And the way the team was built was they were built a specific way. So almost kind of just take our offense, like all of the weapons and what they do. So you need a Debo, and you need a Jawan, and you need a Brandon Ayuk. And basically what I did is I scouted that team for what they looked like previously, right? And once I sent in the report, they sent it back, and it was no good. And their head coach, the scout, sat me down, and he was saying, like, "Look, bro, like, you did an okay job, but the point is that, man, we trying to get the best possible. All right, our scheme can handle anything. Go get the best guys. Don't try to mimic what you think we are. We just made this version of our team because that's what we had on our roster at the time. That's why our team looks this way. But our scheme is sound. We want the best of the best, and then we will ingest our style of football as we see fit based on our development of those players, which guys rise and fall, and the coaches that know how to get those guys to a requisite level." That's what the Chiefs did. They're not the same team they were in 2019. That's why when you see teams and you think about them in an avatar way, like, oh, the Chiefs need Tariq Hill and Mecole Hardman, and they need all of these guys because this is how they're built. And you get lulled to sleep in their style of play, and you forget the fact that if you got a scheme that's sound, it don't matter what type of players you got. It's the coach's job to get the best out of what he has, not curate the entire offense down to the athlete. Okay, that's not the way it works. You think Nick Saban or the boys at Clemson or Ohio State, you think that they turn away 5 stars because they're not what they need? No. They recruit the best, and it's up to the coach to come out and put them in the best position possible. Not the other way around. We ain't fucking Navy or Air Force. You know what I'm saying? We're specifically going after wing T linemen. And that's what we get caught up in during draft time. That's what we get caught up in when we start overpricing guys on our team that mean way more to us than they do to the rest of the league. All right. And that's what happens when we face teams that we think that we are better than, like the Chiefs, but they know how to utilize their team better. And it's not about the literal pound for pound athlete that's better. It's about who knows how to utilize what they have best. That's the next stage for us. That's how we have to pivot. If we don't know how to pivot, then we're just one-trick ponies that know how to handle our style of football. But if we can't do something, what's the point of having Fred Warner be the greatest linebacker in football, but he can only be great in a certain area?
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like it's time for these guys to pivot and show us something different, because the talent needs to start changing, right? It's got to start changing and maturing.
Well, and you can do 4-man fronts, and it doesn't have to be a wide 9. I mean, you can switch things around. There's so many different things that they can do. But yeah, I mean, that's why you end up seeing things like you moved off of Trent Brown early on because he was too big and too slow for your scheme, and you end up with Mike McGlinchey. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wow, that really paid off. Glad
yeah, exactly.
So,
I agree.
Dave Barclay says, wouldn't that be nice? Better off without him. Dazza said, I think that was in response to Brother Bob saying, get rid of Kyle. Dazza says, does it matter who we hire as DC if the players and Kyle Shanahan are going to dictate what happens anyways? Sounds like the players helped get Wilkes fired.
I think that was the affirmative choice. Why Wilkes got fired.
I think it would have mattered, though. If you would have brought in like a Bill Belichick, it would have mattered for sure. Brother Bob says, bucket of chicken, spicy barbecue, and Dave. And
I please.
Yeah, I don't know. Pray. Please. Bucket of chicken says, my guy BB, I got you. Dave, spicy chicken good? Dave Barclay says, absolutely my favorite. I love these people. All right. You guys are crazy. You guys are absolutely crazy. All right. I love it, though. I absolutely love it. Okay. Let me switch this stuff around because it's going to take me a minute. And bear with us. We're not going to be able to get to your guys' chats while we're doing this. And it's going to take up a majority of the rest of the show here. But there's 2 articles I'm going to read small pieces of, and then there's 2 articles that I'm going to read the full thing. And they're different stages in Kyle's career. And I just want you to think. So before we get into this, Coach, what are some of the things that we have a perception of Kyle Shanahan, good or bad? What are some of the perception things that we talk about?
Some of the things that we think about Kyle from top to bottom is, number one, is that he's incredibly smart. All right. That he has a scheme. His best attribute is his preparation and his play calling. All right. And also understanding packages within his scheme, finding the right athlete. I mean, if you go back from the genesis of Kyle's career, which was in 2006, all right, and then you chart his first year as a DC, as an OC, which is in 2007, right? You take 2007 on, and you can take the literal package and find, like, it's almost like a family tree. Like, you can find Debo down all the way down to 2007. right? You can find, like, you can say Debo was Taylor Gabriel. Debo was Pierre Garcon. You see what I'm saying? You can find that, before we had that change of pace back, then it was Alfred Morris. Originally, his original Tevin Coleman was Steve Slayton when he was coming out of West Virginia. You can find all of the packages in Kyle's offense all the way down to when he first started calling plays. So that's something else that you've noticed about him as a coach. Also, right now, presently, we know that he's very hands-on as far as not letting anybody else touch the offense, as far as he wants to be the head coach and the offensive coordinator at the same time. And he won't relinquish it. And he feels as though that it's a duty of his, that it works the best. But I think we have enough proof of concept to know that those are the biggest issues that Kyle has, is game management, adjusting during games, and coming off of his game plan when it's not working, or sticking to his game plan when it is working, instead of trying to get into something else. So those are some of the things that we see with Kyle. And then really just the common denominator under all of that is lack of accountability, right? So it's like, you can take all,
like these are all things we've talked about: arrogance, lack of accountability. What's the other one? A bit of a control freak.
He's a control freak.
Off. All these things.
He has a very, like, the temper is short. So, but stubborn. The thing that's interesting about, the things that are interesting about these articles that we're about to go through is that, in a way, you can look at the quotes and see what's happening in Kyle's career at the time. And in a way, you can kind of see where this stuff comes from, right? So that's why we want to delve into these articles, because, this stuff is really laying on the surface. All you got to do is go back.
Well, and I think the other thing too is, again, when we hired Kyle, or we're bringing him in, at least for me, all I knew is his last name was Shanahan, and he killed it when he was with the Falcons, and I wanted him here. And I was excited about that. The offense was phenomenal, setting records. He's a young Mike Shanahan. Let's bring him in. And then as he's been here, you've started to see maybe some of the cracks in the armor, some of the things that frustrate you about Kyle Shanahan. Still a very good coach, but things that frustrate you, and you're like, man, why doesn't he take accountability? Well, he's young. Maybe he'll grow. I'm not so sure. And after reading some of these, just you guys form your own opinion. We're just bringing the information to you. We're going to give our opinion on it, but we're going to bring the information to you. But think about all the things that we talked about, or all the things that we say about Kyle Shanahan, good or bad. And let's see if some of these things have always been intrinsically ingrained in who he is. So the first article, we're not going to read the whole thing on this one, but the first one is right after he was hired as the Texans offensive coordinator at the age of 29. His first gig is offensive coordinator. So,
and before you start, Jesse, what I would like to do is, like, chronologically just kind of give, like, some numbers so people know exactly what's going on during these times, right? So if this is 2008 or 2009?
2009, August 4th, 2009 is when this article was written.
Okay, so in 2009, he was the OC at Houston. All right. And for that year in Houston, they went, what is wrong with me? The AFC South. That year they went 9-7.
Okay.
All right. So let's rip.
Okay. There's a reason Texans offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan looks so young. He is. At 29, he's the youngest coordinator in the NFL, easily mistakable for a ball boy until he puts on the headset. This season, Shanahan begins his second year as offensive coordinator. So, second year as offensive coordinator, first time calling plays. So, let me clarify. Shanahan begins his second year as offensive coordinator and his first at game day calling plays. He called plays at times last season, but Coach Gary Kubiak has removed the training wheels and given him the full-time job. Honestly, I feel my responsibilities this year are exactly the same as last year, Shanahan said. Going into my second year, guys know what I want to get done, and I'll get a little more respect. Shanahan doesn't think he'll be reaching for the Alka-Seltzer more often. This is why I like coaching, he said. We like the pressure. It's the motivation to get up as early as we do and stay as late as we do. If the pressure wasn't there, it would be too much of a grind. It's what we enjoy and why we do it. So right there, I think you're getting a look into his competitiveness, which is some of the good things, right? These are some of the good things about Kyle Shanahan. Very competitive, very fiery. You see it right there in that one of his first quotes after getting hired.
Yes, I'm sorry, Jesse. And also you see that he's already keen to wanting his respect. He's already keen to it already. And he also knows that him calling plays is a big deal, right? His first year as an offensive coordinator, he did not call plays. All he did is do game prep. Coach Gary Kubiak called the plays. So we're just trying to get you into the context of what's happening right now. This is what we know now as the genius. This is his first year getting to actually do the things that we think he's great at.
Right. The Texans finished third in the league in yards last season and set franchise records with 6,113 total yards, 4,267 passing yards, and 1,846 rushing. Quarterback Matt Schaub became a 3,000-yard passer for the first time. Rookie Steve Slayton ran for 1,282 yards, leading all NFL rookies. Andre Johnson led the NFL with 1,575 receiving yards and 115 catches and earned a Pro Bowl assignment. I've been excited about this year because he's, talking about Kubiak, been more vocal about it and told me he wants me to do it full time, Shanahan said. I think I owe it to him so I can do my job and he can focus on his. So let me read that again.
Read that
again. This is Shanahan talking about Kubiak. Kubiak also called plays. Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. Shanahan has just gotten promoted to calling the plays. He says, I've been excited about this year because he's, Kubiak, been more vocal about it and told me he wants me to do it full time, Shanahan said. I think I owe it to him so I can do my job and he can focus on his. What does that mean? What does that mean?
It means that Kyle, at a young age, first starting out as an OC, Kyle already understands that being a head coach is a full-time job. Being a head coach, it's more than calling plays. And he knows that calling plays isn't a privilege, but it's actually something that he's taking off of Coach Kubiak's plate so Coach Kubiak can do his job. It's just, and this is Kyle saying this out of his own mouth at 29 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like right now, you should ask Kyle, like we could ask him, like, my man, don't you think it may be time for you to give up, relinquish play calling duties and get somebody up to snuff? Like, this is my thing. If Mike McDaniel is good enough to run the Dolphins, he's good enough to call a game for the 49ers. Like, my man, like at some point, this is what I mean when I'm talking about pivoting, right? Like, if you're going to pivot, you're going to have to be able to repurpose what you have to understand how to utilize it better. And this right here is just one of those quotes literally from Kyle of him understanding the value of it because he's on the other side.
Interesting. I find that very interesting. All right, let's go to the next one. This one here is this is the biggest hit piece. The biggest hit piece. So this is now 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
They're in Washington. Was this the last year in Washington?
Yeah, this is it. This is 2013. Okay. They got there in 2010.
So December 15, 2013. It's titled Kyle Shanahan, Staff Inexperience at the Core of Redskins Dysfunction. Now, this isn't just some random fly-by-the-night writer. This is Jason LaCanfora, which we're all very well aware of.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a real guy.
This is a real guy. So a lot of inside information coming out of this one. Buckle your bootstraps. This one's good. All right.
This shit's going to be a
Redskins
bloodbath.
offensive coordinator. Yeah, it is. Redskins offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan, son of head coach Mike Shanahan, has not endeared himself to others on the staff and within Redskins Park, according to numerous team sources. According to current and former staff members, Kyle Shanahan has been granted virtual autonomy by Mike Shanahan to guide the team. So basically, he's letting him play head coach. Conversations with several people within the organization have revealed a similar perception of Kyle Shanahan as someone who was empowered and enabled by his father, spending an abundance of time in his father's office, given a wide swath of power, and rubbing many people, players, fellow coaches, and members of the football operations in the wrong way. At the same time, Kyle Shanahan has been the most heavily rewarded of the team's assistant coaches. As team sources said, the 2-year extension Shanahan earned following the playoff run in 2012 will pay him $1.5 million in 2014 alone. That's money he's almost certain to collect away from the team, with this regime widely expected to be fired after this season. With the team in a 3-10 collapse, RG3 now inactive, and the franchise in disarray, the composition of this staff has fallen under criticism, as has the work of the Shanahans in particular, with the lack of experience and pedigree on the offensive side of the ball seen as a particular problem both within the organization and outside. Kyle is the head coach. It's just that no one knows he is, said one member of the organization. He gets whatever he wants, and he has no relationship at all with RG3. So how could it work? I'm going to stop right there. So we talk about nepotism. We talk about being a little bit spoiled. This kind of right here is a look into how maybe this happened. Right? Mike is the head coach by title, but Kyle was the de facto head coach behind the scenes, is what this article is saying. So if that's true, you can kind of see where this monster could be created, right?
Yeah, he kind of let him run. He kind of let him get his test drive out on an organization, because really, I was around at that time, and I remember the word around just the football buzz around the team is that Kyle was innovating the team, right? He was kind of taking the old offense that Coach Mike Shanahan had brought in, and he was optimizing it, putting in new routes, putting in new concepts with the offense. And he had a pretty good staff at the time. So it was very much so at the time, it was very much so like a feeling like Mike was kind of just a figurehead, and it was Kyle that everybody was doing and going at. And then what was crazy is that even in the article, I remember at that time, you got to remember, Coach Kasarik is one of the highest paid position coaches in the league, and he gets paid a cool $1 million a year. We know that. Now, this is back in 2013, and Kyle was a OC, and he was making $1.5 million a year. That's crazy money for OCs at that time. You know what I mean? So that's another big thing that was kind of had the city riled up, because like they were losing and Kyle was getting paid a crap ton of money.
All right, let's continue. This doesn't get any better. As a former member of the organization put it, Kyle bitches about everything, and then his father has to fix it. He bitches about the food in the cafeteria. He bitches about the field. He bitches about the equipment. He complains, and then Mike takes care of it. Kyle is a big problem there. He is not well liked. Several members of the organization said Kyle Shanahan was a cause of internal strife, surrounding himself with young coaches with inferior experience and allowing for no checks and balances of outside voices in the offensive coaching rooms. This is the NFL. It's not supposed to be training grounds for coaches, said someone who has worked with Kyle in Washington. It's ridiculous. Look at his staff. It sucks. This is kind of funny in hindsight.
It is.
Mike's best buddy is longtime Shanahan assistant and current linebackers coach Bobby Slowick. And Slowick's son, or Bob Slowick, and Slowick's son is in his second year out of college and he's on the staff. Everyone on the staff is in his first or second year except for Mike and Kyle and Haslett, defensive coordinator Jim Haslett, and Raheem Morris, the secondaries coach. God, that was such a lit staff.
And everyone knows
staff
was loaded.
Dude, insane. And everyone knows Raheem is there because he is close with Kyle. Those two go way back. Kyle
to their Tampa days.
Yep. Kyle is not that confident. So they set him up with a bunch of yes men rather than have some experienced coaches to push him. It's like Kyle is the Pied Piper and these kids just follow him around. I mean, Mike has been a head coach for 20 years. Usually a guy like that has a posse he can bring with him. So he's got Bobby Turner, running back coach, same, and Slowick, and that's it. How does that happen? How does he end up hiring all of his son's buddies?
Can we take a pause right here?
Yeah, go ahead. Pause. Go ahead.
Can we take a pause right here? Can we just take a moment to just appreciate the difference in journalism? You would never, ever get an article like this coming out of the Bay at all. Nobody would have the stones to go around and get people on the record to figure out what is going on with the organization. This wasn't sneaking around. This wasn't a hit piece. This was, dog, we're being lied to. We're not being told the truth. And we just want to know what's going on. Like, this would never happen with the Bay media. Never. Continue.
No. What Mike has allowed to happen here with that staff, there is no excuse for it. There are guys on that staff who are just not qualified, and it shows up. Have you seen the quarterback develop? Look at the defensive ends, Brian Arakpo and Ryan Kerrigan. Are they progressing or regressing? Are you seeing the offensive linemen they drafted make it to the field? How many players are getting the kind of NFL coaching you'd expect on that staff? The Redskins have had a succession of first-time wide receiver coaches on the staff, and the offensive staff has generally been devoid of experience other than Turner. Most of the offensive staff had less than 2 years of NFL experience before coming to Washington, and even in those cases, the 2 years weren't as actual position coaches, but as offensive assistants and low-level help. This is what's crazy, right? Because two things can be very true. One, these guys can all end up being good coaches, and two, they weren't ready then, right? Like that can be true. Washington, look at this coaching staff, and they couldn't find a way to win with this all-star, what now is deemed an all-star coaching staff, then was a bunch of young kids who were inexperienced.
It was a frat.
And it was
a frat at the time.
Yes. Quarterbacks coach Matt LaFleur worked with Kyle in Houston and had only 2 years of experience as an offensive assistant with the Texans prior to becoming the Redskins quarterback coach. Similarly, receivers coach Mike McDaniel was a lower-level assistant on the Texans staff before coming to Washington. Tight ends coach Sean McVay, only prior NFL experience to joining Washington, came in 2008 as an offensive assistant in Tampa. This is this is one of my favorite parts.
This is what I love about this.
McVay is really the only one of those kids qualified to do what he's doing, said one member of the organization. Who's the one that's won a Super Bowl since?
He's the only one that's won. He's the only one that's won. Yeah.
Crazy, right?
And he's the only one who is adapting with his talent. He's the only one that, if you think about what they looked like when they lost to New England, when they got embarrassed, they were a hard-nosed, pound the ball team with Todd Gurley, right? Then look at what they were when they won. Completely different team, whole different style of play. And if you look at us from 2019 to now, the only thing that's different about us offensively is we do more with the weapons that we have, and he trusts Brock more, so he just opens more of the passing element of the game plan, of the scheme. But we're not different. We're not evolving. the Chiefs don't look anything like they looked like in 2019. You know what I'm saying? We got to learn how to change, bro.
General admission says he feels like he's in a reading comprehension class.
You like this?
It's good. All right. I'll continue. Several members of the Redskins traveling party were perturbed when, following a win at Dallas on Thanksgiving in 2012, Kyle Shanahan and several of his assistants were hollering loudly, crowing and alluding to Cowboys coach Jason Garrett's job security on the team bus, hooting how they might have gotten him fired while heading to the airport after the win. The Redskins were just 5-6 themselves at the time, and according to sources, one member of the staff actually told them to shut up and diffuse the staff. Furthermore, Kyle Shanahan has long had a very strained relationship with Griffin. Sources said that one member of the staff saying Shanahan treats Griffin like a JV quarterback. Kyle knows ball, but he's just so petty. I'm going to repeat this. Kyle knows ball, but he's just so petty, and he picks fights and holds grudges over small stuff. Sound familiar? He's a mountain out of a molehill guy, and he's got entitlement syndrome. That's why we ended up hiring all of his close friends and buddies so no one can challenge him. But it makes you worse in the long run because there's no accountability. Because there is no accountability. What have we been saying? Ultimately, it is his father's fault for pacifying his son. Whoa, that was a lot. Let's talk through that one. How do you feel after that one?
I mean, right here, it's kind of like, I feel like it's a masterclass in why Kyle hates Washington. Because I believe that as the Shanahans are an institution in football, you know, that is the truth. However, they get fawned on in certain areas of the country, and in my area of the country, in the DMV, sports is not king out here. Politics is. Like, sports kind of takes a backseat to a lot of different things because it's so many things to do. So the ball coach of any team out here, unless you're winning championships, like, you're disposable. And there are people that have been here for a very long time that started here in the media, like Mike Wilbon started here. You know, there's the Washington Times, there's the Washington Post. And you think about all of the people that are in media over here. And I just believe that Kyle and those guys don't like this area, especially the Washington Commanders. It's because they just weren't impressed with them. They really weren't. They weren't impressed with the Shanahans. And I believe that when you are in a transient area where there's a lot of different hands in the pot, you know, you're going to walk up against different walks of life. You're going to have to be malleable. And I think that their time here shows that, you know, nobody's beholden to, like, you know, your process of doing things. Like, if you're not winning, we're going to let you know we're not winning. And a lot of that comes from the way Mike, you can see a lot of how this experience in Washington shapes a lot of how Kyle operates as a head coach now, because the quarterback situation is what got Mike Shanahan fired. That's what got him fired. It was the miss on John Beck, the miss on Donovan McNabb, the miss on RG3, and ultimately not being able to do anything with Kirk Cousins because it was just too late. So Kyle knows full well why his father got fired and why basically the end of his coaching career is really a flop, like the last 5 years. But one thing about it is that he's culpable. He got into a position of being an OC, and he got the number 2 overall pick. And RG3 is not perfect. We all know he's not. He's rather obnoxious now. He's got a punchable face, in my opinion. but um, but he didn't do right by the kid. He didn't, and there was just enough people in a market that wasn't going to sit by and just be quiet about it, and they resented the situation. That's why he doesn't like Washington, because he got exposed, right? And there's really nothing he could do about it, and they got fired.
All right. I'm going to end it here. It says Kyle Shanahan had a good run as a member of Gary Kubiak's staff in Houston. Kubiak was a longtime assistant to Mike Shanahan, and with the Redskins crumbling, he could end up finding a spot under Kubiak elsewhere if Washington owner Dan Snyder makes a major change as expected. Kubiak was fired as the Texans coach last week, but it has long been clear to many people in various corridors of the Redskins organization that the pair of Mike Shanahan with his son running the offense in Washington has been a doomed combination, especially within the construct of the lack of other strong voices on the offensive side of the ball, and that the nepotism has served to hinder rather than help the growth of his franchise and the development of RG3. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, this was 2013.
13.
Where are we at? 2013?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was 11 years ago. Kyle Shanahan easily could have grown since then. Let's talk about We're going to keep going forward. We're going to talk about after his first year with Atlanta, and then we're going to read a piece that is like advice to him as he takes the head coaching job in San Francisco. Okay. So this one I'm just going to read part of. It's going to give you a little insight as to what Falcons fans thought of him after that first year. So it wasn't supposed to end this way. Unlike previous coordinators, Kyle Shanahan was on the verge of leaving Atlanta on a high note. He orchestrated one of the most prolific offenses in NFL history. From Matt Ryan earning the NFL's most prestigious award to nearly every skill position player contributing to their success, Shanahan cemented his status as one of the best offensive minds in the league. After enduring countless of disappointing performances in 2015, the Falcons' underwhelming offense transformed into a complete juggernaut. Ryan and Shanahan got on the same page following prior friction, adding key free agents to address critical needs that made a drastic difference. A few shrewd, low-key signings at wide receiver provided much-needed explosiveness. All of these players helped create a magical season, which somehow ended in the most brutal manner imaginable. The Falcons blew a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl, and Shanahan's aggressive play calling was widely criticized. When analysts dissect their crushing loss, he was the center of every conversation. Why didn't they run the damn ball? Replaced rise up as the most commonly used expression in Atlanta. An enraged fan base welcomed his departure, similar to how they were happy to see Mike Mularkey, Dirk Cutter, Brian Van Gorder, and Mike Nolan go elsewhere. While that's understandable, Shanahan's short history in the Falcons. Public enemy number one. Whenever a team starts 6-1 and finishes the season 8-8, major changes are bound to happen. Besides Thomas Dimitroff possibly getting fired, there was some speculation about Shanahan's future in Atlanta. So this was after the first year. How did one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the league suffer the worst season of his career at the age of 30? An offense featuring Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman averaged just 21.2 points a game. Although the lack of quality receiving options played a significant part in their failures, someone who's going to be held accountable for the Falcons losing 7 out of their last 9 games, especially with them having the easiest schedule in the league. The organization decided not to make any high-profile changes. Shanahan remained as their offensive coordinator, which secured his label as the most unpopular person in Atlanta. Most fans weren't viewing the franchise quarterback, new head coach, or the rebuilding defense as the biggest detriment to the team. The self-assured, persistent offensive coordinator that feuded with Roddy White was their main target. It even meant starting a petition to have him fired. How things changed so quickly. So that's what the Falcons fans thought of him
the year
halfway
before.
after the first year, and then also after the second year, they put the full blame on him for the Super Bowl, wondering why they didn't run the ball. Another thing that I want to bring up that came up twice in this is that he basically feuded with two veterans on the team. One of them being Roddy White, who we know was a very good receiver in his time. And then the other one was with Matt Ryan. Now, I know that Matt Ryan, there's another article out there, which I didn't pull up, but Matt Ryan was the one that reached out to Kyle after the 2015 season. It wasn't the other way around. Kyle did not reach out to Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan reached out to him and said, listen, we got to figure this out. Let's have a beer. Let's talk. Let's hash out all of our differences and let's move forward because we can only rely on each other. Let's go win. It wasn't Kyle that pulled them together, which is kind of one of those things that we talk about when it comes to leadership. Like that should have been a Kyle meeting, not a quarterback meeting, right? It shouldn't have been Matt Ryan.
I mean, I agree 100%. I just, if you look at it, Kyle was an OC at 29 years old in 2008. He had 2 years with Houston. They went 8-8, and then they went 9-7. Washington was a disaster outside of 1 year. I believe they won 3 games, 5 games. They finally had that 10-6 year, where really they started 3-6 that season. They had to win 7 games in a row to win the division in 2012 and RG3. And that's honestly, and if you think about it, Kyle scrapped his entire offense for them to win those 7 games. He pivoted. He threw out the entire offense. All right. They went full Baylor RPO, right? Alfred Morris was damn near the rookie of the year. He had like 1,200 yards rushing that season. It was crazy. All right. So after that, that's when death's doom happened. 2013, they suck again. So if you think about it, Kyle has had one season where he's been 10-6, and then and then his second season being at OC, they went 9-7. Outside of that, all the rest of the years that he's been an OC up until being 34 years old, he's lost or they've gone 500. Then Cleveland, we don't even want to talk about Cleveland, right? Bounced. They lost, right? So right now you've been on 3 teams, all right? You've been the OC for 3 of them, and you still only have 2 winning seasons going in. Now, mind you, this is 2014. This is only 3 years before we get Kyle. All right. 3 years before we get Kyle, before we're saying that he's a genius. You know what I'm saying? Like the way he left Cleveland, Johnny Manziel was a train wreck. We got to be honest about that. But at the same time, he goes upstairs to the brass in Cleveland and has a multifaceted, like over 25 slide PowerPoint on why he cannot coach Johnny Manziel anymore and why he does not want to be the offensive coordinator of the team. Like,
please let me out of my contract.
This is a guy, he quit the job in the middle of the season. And this is an OC job where really guys are scrambling for these jobs. He's that confident. Like, you know what? I don't even care about my rep. I don't care about my reputation. I don't care about my job, my money.
Let me out of here.
Imagine, dude, we talk during work all the time. Don't we, Jesse? Like, we talk during our jobs all the time. Jesse, can you imagine setting up a Teams meeting with your supervisor on, these are the reasons why I want to fucking quit. Okay. You're going to have to walk through this with me. If you just please take time, sit down, grab a refreshment, hold for questions, please. It's going to be quick and smooth. So he bounces from Cleveland. All right. Still only 2 winning seasons as an offensive coordinator. Goes to Atlanta. They don't like him there. Mind you, you're beefing with Roddy White. At the time, Roddy White is Mr. Atlanta. He's the face of the franchise. You already have Julio Jones that's already there. It's a ready-made offense, ready to go. And then they go 500. And in that 500 year, they lose like 6 of 7 of their last games to go 500 his first year there. And it's the easiest schedule in the NFL at the time. I can't make this up. Go back and check. Okay. So even that 500 season in Atlanta, they fell to 500. All right. They were on a crazy win streak. And then that's when Matt Ryan has to pull them to the side, and then they have the Super Bowl year. All right. That's the best year that he's ever done as a coordinator outside of 2012 with RG3 and a peg leg. All right. And then we already know what happened. He blows it. The whole situation with the Patriots. With the Patriots. And then he comes to us, and then we've been calling him a genius for the past 7 years.
Well, here's an article by Jason Cole, another familiar name. And this is the final one that we're going to go through. This is basically right after he's been hired as the 49ers head coach, or as he's searching to be a head coach after leaving the Atlanta Falcons. And it's basically like just a piece of advice for him. What I find interesting, really the narrative around all of this is similar to the things that we've said. And of course, people go with, okay, well, why not go back to Tom Zula then if you hate it so much? Nobody's saying fire Kyle. All we're saying is that he's had these flaws in leadership intrinsically ingrained in him. And one thing that is consistent across these articles is there's not really anybody that's willing to hold him accountable in any form or fashion. And Jed York is, think of Kyle Shanahan as an addict, and Jed York is enabling him to be an addict. If he needs accountability, Jed York is not giving it to him, because Jed York is just so happy to be his buddy and so happy that even if they lost in an NFC championship, the point is that to get the best out of Kyle, you need somebody who is willing to hold him accountable. And there's nobody here that does that. So why would anything be different? We can talk about how it was in 2013 and be like, well, that was 11 years ago. Things must have changed. Well, here we are 4 years later, and we're going to hear a lot of the same things and some things that we know to be true or have always thought to be true. And it's like, well, yeah, they were true at some point. So why would they be any different now based off of what we've seen? So let's get into it. This one says Kyle Shanahan must own his mistakes to succeed as an NFL head coach. Again, this is Jason Cole, very well-known writer. Houston, a quick message to new 49ers. Okay, so he's just been hired. New 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan and all the other young, bright coaches out there. Degree of difficulty doesn't matter in football, even the NFL, especially not when playing the Patriots. The second guessing of Shanahan's strategy in the fourth quarter of Atlanta's stunning and historic loss to the New England Patriots on Sunday was widespread and obvious. At two critical moments, Shanahan did what many young, aggressive play callers fall prey to doing. He fell in love with his own genius. And in the aftermath, he didn't seem too happy with the idea of admitting it. The question now becomes whether Shanahan learns from this or lets it nag him for his entire career. A scarlet letter burned into his frontal lobe. Sounds very familiar. 5 years, 6, 7 years later, on both occasions, with Shanahan calling for pass plays in situations in which running the ball seemed logical and compelling, the results were disastrous. On the first, quarterback Matt Ryan was sacked and fumbled the ball away on 3rd and 1 from the Falcons' 36-yard line. The Patriots scored to make it 28-20 on the ensuing possession. On the second, Ryan was sacked on 2nd down from the Patriots' 23-yard line, and the Falcons were charged with holding on 3rd down, taking them out of field goal range for points that would have given them a 2-score lead with less than 4 minutes remaining. They punted and watched as Tom Brady led the Patriots down the field to tie the game. Multiple NFL coaches from other teams called the play calling somewhere between an unnecessary risk. Your dog's barking.
I'm sorry, that's hittable.
It's good. Multiple NFL coaches from other teams called the play calling somewhere between an unnecessary risk and arrogant stupidity, grasping on the fact that Shanahan has a long history of being considered overconfident. People who know Kyle well will tell you that he's arrogant, said an executive of an NFC team. He talks down to people and he doesn't listen. He thinks that he knows better than anybody else, and he likes to prove that. That executive and two coaches from other NFL teams said Monday that Shanahan simply tried too hard at a time when it was unnecessary. They also said that that is a common trait when facing New England. The Patriots get in your head, and then all of a sudden you see coaches and players do things that don't make sense, an executive said. Yeah, I think that's been the case ever since the 2007 divisional round when Marty Schottenheimer panicked against them, said one of the coaches, referring to Schottenheimer's decision to go for it on 4th and 11 rather than punt. The way the Giants have beaten the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl with heroic comebacks or big plays has added an aura to the Patriots in the postseason. Or as a coach was asked, do you feel like you have to pull the sword out of the stone to beat the Patriots? That's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. The way their last two Super Bowl wins have happened, I'll buy it, the coach said. After losing those two aforementioned Super Bowls to the Giants, the Patriots have won two highly improbable titles in the past 3 years. 2 seasons ago, they beat Seattle on a late game interception on the goal line as Seattle appeared ready to score from the New England 1-yard line. This year, the Patriots staged the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history after Atlanta took a 28-3 lead in the second half. Then Shanahan made his calls. There is a report that he took responsibility for it, but after the game, he defended those calls. He was asked directly about the sack that took the Falcons out of field goal range. Here's a very interesting quote. Pay attention to this. So remember, they just said that they were at the 23-yard line. They took a sack, then they took a 10-yard penalty. That is the sequence of plays, what happened. Here's Shanahan's recollection of it just after the game. From what I remember, I think we ended up in 2nd and 11. Then we were throwing it, trying to get back into field goal range to get a few yards, Shanahan said. I think we did run on 1st down. I think we lost a yard. You don't think just run the ball and make your guy kick a 50-yard field goal. You try your hardest to give him a great chance to for sure make it, but we ended up getting a sack, and it's not really an option after that. The problem with this assessment is that the potential kick was much shorter. The Falcons were at the New England 23-yard line, meaning a field goal attempt from there would have been just 41 yards. Falcons kicker Matt Ryan had made 31 of 32 field goals from under 49 yards that season. So Kyle, directly after the moment, wasn't even aware of the situation. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. He wasn't even aware of the situation. He
Right.
didn't even understand what was happening at the time because he thought they were much farther back than they were. And these are the things that get lost. They get lost in the sauce, really, for lack of a better term. And we keep looking at these things as one-offs, like, oh, well, it was Jimmy who missed the overthrow to Emmanuel Sanders, and it was Jacoski Tart who dropped the pick in LA, and it was, it's Coach Steve Wilkes for not calling the right defense to stop Patrick Mahomes, and it was Spencer Burford who missed the block, and it's just like, no, bro. Go back and look. He's been here long enough. You know what I'm saying? Go back and read. Look at what people are saying and just leaving for you to come back and pick up in time. And you'll see what's not the difference between what has been happening in Kyle's career, in my opinion, his great career. I think he has a very good career. But the difference between what's happening in Kyle's career now that never really happened before is that he's in a market that's not going to actually chronologically date what's going on with him. There's nobody that's actually going to put it in print. So right here, it's kind of like he's in a really good market that's galvanized to the team being good for the area. But Atlanta, think about Atlanta. Atlanta is not beholden to the Falcons. There's a lot more going on in Atlanta than that damn football team. And there's a lot of people that are attached to that team where it is their job to tell the truth, to talk about what they see. Same thing in Washington. You see what I'm saying? So same thing in Houston. So it's like, in a way, I feel like it's kind of a shame that me and you have to sit up here and root through articles just to kind of get the perspective that a lot of people try to act like doesn't exist. And I understand that like this may be like inflammatory to certain people where they may feel like, you know, we're attacking Kyle, but trust me, he's a big boy. He'll be okay.
First of all, we didn't write these articles. We're
Yeah,
just
right.
bringing up what was written, and we're reading it to you. Like, and there's a common theme. There's arrogance, not taking accountability, not being held accountable by anybody in the organization. Like, these are common themes throughout all of these articles at every step of the way. And these are things that we've said about Kyle since he's been here.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I never did my due diligence when he was hired to go back and read all these things and know these things, that these were always there if we had just looked for them. Again, we just thought he was a hot shot, young offensive coordinator with the last name Shanahan. It's going to be great. And it has been very good. Again, not saying fire Kyle Shanahan.
No.
But all the things that we say are issues as far as not being smart in situational football, it was there. Not being held accountable, it was there. Not taking personal accountability, it was there. Being arrogant, it was there. All these things are still who he is. He's not changing. So for better or for worse, Kyle Shanahan is who Kyle Shanahan is. He was that guy in 2013, according to that article. He was that guy in 2017. And 7 years later, all those things still remain. Again, this is a piece of advice to him as he's taking the San Francisco head coaching job based off of everything that's happened in his past up to this point. You tell me where we are doing anything other than giving you what's here. Yes, we're giving our opinion a little bit, but we didn't write these articles. And these are not just fly by the night article writers who can write for anybody and don't get paid. These are big time publications.
National, yeah, this is national publications.
Writers.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Again, to those who know Shanahan, even those who like him, that sounds all too familiar. Kyle is really not good at taking blame himself, said a coach who has worked with Shanahan. Look at how he handled it when things went wrong in Washington and Cleveland. I'm not saying that Kyle is wrong, but he has a tendency to point fingers. I'm not saying Kyle is wrong, but he has a tendency to point fingers. You heard about RG3 in Washington. You heard about the former general manager, Ray Farmer, in Cleveland. Personally, I think Kyle is going to grow out of it. His dad, former coach Mike Shanahan, knows the deal, and he's working with him. He's got a good GM and John Lynch to work with in San Francisco. Those guys can talk to him. Still, some wonder. I know Kyle really well, and I trust him. But if he doesn't get all the responsibility, he'll point fingers, and that's going to be hard to coach through. The end. There you go.
I mean, so this isn't like, you know, this is stuff that we've been talking about, you know, for 7 years that we just see, right? And we just, you know, have been crazy enough to just talk about what we see, right? And it's not like we're attacking the man, but it's like, yo, I see this. Like, this is a pattern. And, you know, I feel like because we always are talking, like we're going to be on here tomorrow. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to be talking to these guys. We're going to be talking to each other all the time. And because of that, I feel like sometimes it could be like, well, he's not that bad. You know what I mean? Or it's like, nah, dude, it's like, no, we need to get the blocking together. It's the O-line. And it's just like, nah, bro. Like, he's got some work to do too. He's got to switch some things up. And, you know, if you just want to look at like the preparation of the game, the decisions made during the game, how they were even warming up to the game, it's like, you know, if he's going to be our lifetime head coach, and I just said that, like, I don't see him going nowhere as long as they can win in the regular season. They're going to ride this till the wheels fall off. So if he's going to be the head time guy, Like, how weird is it going to be to see Kyle snapping on the sideline with a full gray beard? Like, you know what I mean? It's going to be like, it's going to be like, he still is doing this shit. He's still doing this. Like, dude, your boys are going to be in college. Like, you know what I mean? It's going to be crazy. So, I feel like I want to be genuine in the buildup of this season, right? Because I feel like we're kind of past players at this point. This team is talented, right? This team is very talented. And I know that we have to get the offensive line better, and that's true. We do. But don't be disillusioned. We had everything we needed to win a Super Bowl this year. Everything. You don't get it all. You know what I mean? You don't get it all. And for what we had on our roster, if you say that we needed a better offensive line, then what you're basically saying is that we needed the perfect offense then to beat these guys, right? Because the scales tip on the strengths that we have, and we were weaker in the offensive line, but we had weapons all over the field, So I know we're going to get better. I want us to, and that conversation is going to be awesome down the line. Like I've seen some comments that were saying like, this isn't a football conversation. Like, I get it. A lot of times we get straight to the meat and bones of it. Right. But I feel like this conversation was a little bit more important because once we get the draft going and once we start getting new names and being able to fawn over these guys and guys start coming back and free agency, Kyle's going to be able to slip under the radar again. Right. And then when we get right to the altar and he leaves us there standing there again, then everybody will come out again and start to finish. This is the third Super Bowl that he's been to in this franchise. Name another coach that can do that. And you already know the perforated tear here conversations that are already ready made. So
canned responses. Do you want Chip Kelly and Tom Zula?
Yeah. Who else are we gonna get? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like all of that like Stockholm syndrome stuff, right? But it's like really, the truth is that he's got to get better too, and I would like to see him change because I honestly, this is the God's honest truth. If Kyle found a way to like work on his emotional intelligence, especially during games, he's got the potential to be like one of the greatest coaches of all time.
I agree. I think this is the biggest thing, right? And Copenhagen interpretation. You're not the only one that said this. A lot of people said this, right? But Jesse, you have to accept the fact that Kyle is Jed's guy. No use in beating a dead horse. This is not about fire Kyle, right? People are going to take this out of context. Oh, he's fire Kyle, or we can't win with Kyle, or any of those things. What this is taking stock of the team. And when we take stock of the team, we always talk about players. What are we going to do in free agency? What are we going to do? Who's going to be the next DC? Who are we going to draft? But we don't take stock in what is already in-house sometimes and where the improvements can be made. And just like Coach said, this team is ready-made to win a Super Bowl. What is holding it back? It's the small things. It's the small changes that are holding this team back. It is the small changes that have stopped Kyle and this team from winning a Super Bowl and to stop the Atlanta Falcons from winning a Super Bowl. Small tweaks. But a lot of these things have been glaring weaknesses in who Kyle Shanahan is, for as great as he is, glaring weaknesses forever. And so the question now becomes, okay, can he change? Maybe. But the more likely question is can he overcome his faults and still win a Super Bowl? Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't seem like he's changing who he is. Like, what he is intrinsically ingrained in who he is, and it's going to stay that way. So how can he win in spite of some of those flaws? But again, I feel like we can't even have the conversation of those flaws without it turning into a conversation that we're not trying to take it to that place of firing him. But we can't even agree that Kyle Shanahan does have some of these flaws. Yeah. And the point of this is to realize, hey, let's get on common ground here. These flaws are not new. This is not Jesse's a content creator and Coach is a content creator.
Yeah.
And they're
Like, we
trying
didn't
to
just
stir
pull
up
this out our
fire,
ass.
and they don't like Kyle and they don't know what they're talking about. It's not that. It's this has been in place forever. And to me, when we read these a week ago or found these, it surprised the hell out of me. I didn't know these things existed. I just always had a perception of Kyle. And to me, that perception became reality while reading these. It was like, geez, it's not just
started kicking you these articles. Yeah. We were on the phone together.
Flaws in who Kyle Shanahan is, and they've always been there. So now I feel like we can have that common ground. It's not to fire Kyle or whatever. It's just to say, hey, we can all agree these flaws exist. How do we now overcome them? Because it's not about just bringing up problems. It's having solutions. So what are the solutions in place? And once we have stock of those solutions or those problems, we can work on solutions going forward this whole offseason. That's what this is about. All right. So I want to be very clear about that.
No, I agree 100%. It's like the first part of moving on from a problem is admitting that you have one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And like, I feel like, dude, you can't keep kicking the can on. And in a sense, it is kind of unfair to gaslight the players, to act like, we need the perfect team to win. Like, we're good enough. We really are. You know what I mean? Like, now that we've been there enough, we've played the teams, we've seen the Phillies, and we've had like our fair share of devastating losses. I think 49ers fans are pretty well versed in understanding what a championship team looks like and what one doesn't. And we have more than enough to win. It's how the team is utilized. You know what I'm saying? So I understand that there's so many blocks that you have to build to even place this conversation on that platform. So yes, you have to draft right. Yes, you have to develop. Yes, you have to get coaches in the office. I mean, in the building, right? All of those things have to happen. But, there's teams out there. There's no excuse, because there's teams out there doing that and they're excelling. So I just I want to see Kyle pivot. It's like, I need to see something new. I need more cowbell.
All right, there's a lot of super chats that happened. We've got 28 of these things, so let's fire through them as quickly as possible. Bucket of Chicken says, spicy it is, Dave. I know BB is a barbecue kind of guy. Dazza says, can you see ever Debo replicating his 2021 season? No. And I said that right after. This is not a knock on Debo. That was a very
phenomenal year.
Season. Duplicating your best is very hard to do. Doesn't mean he can't be effective. Doesn't mean he doesn't help this team. But duplicating that season, I just don't think it's realistic, nor should it be with a guy like CMC still here. So Dave Barclay says, we love you guys, Jesse and Coach. Promise. Dave Barclay says, I look forward to these shows because of the fellow fans. Yeah. And then he says, great people following great people. Appreciate that. Ryan says, great show, fellas. Jesse, why do you hate Brock so much? Nice. Dave Barclay says, Ryan G in the house, throwing blows. Bucket of Chicken says, Ryan, spicy or barbecue? Dave says, damn autofill, haha, RGH in on that chicken? Question mark, jeez. Dave Barclay says, 20 years, there will be so many coaches coming out talking blatant crap about Kyle. I feel like no one likes him. What you just read makes all kinds of sense. Kyle is entitled and needs to be traded. Now, I will be curious, especially if they don't win a Super Bowl, what is said about this 10-year long term? Like, what does end up coming out, right? Because it's interesting hearing all those coaches talk this offseason, and you can kind of hear it, especially in Mike McDaniel and how he talks about Kyle. He's not that fond of who Kyle is as a person. He appreciates the opportunity and loves Kyle for that, but doesn't seem that fond of really like enjoying Kyle as a person and being around him. So
he makes some pretty like striking comments that he just leaves flatly out there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, my genius was being stolen and I had to put up with it. Like, everybody knew that I was super depressed and I was pushed to drinking when I was struggling. Like, he said some pretty flats where like he said some follow-up stuff where it's like, I feel like Drewski was like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Dave Barclay says Shanahan has been our issue for 7 years. Truth. I don't know about that, but he stands in his own way and he's petty. I don't disagree with that. Official BNA Music says Kyle wants people to kiss the ring that doesn't exist.
That's real.
Dave says official BNA is right. Kyle needs humility somehow. Mm-hmm. Corey Soto says he didn't do right by RG3 or Lance, and I will always stand on that hill. The consequences of his management of Lance on Trey Lance's career, as well as his mental and emotional, isn't talked about enough. Yeah, if you talk about it, then you're just bitching, and we already have Purdy, so there's no point in bringing it up. By Victor says Bay Area is too soft and woke and to ask hard questions. All right. Dave says, I said fire Kyle, but no, trade him. Okay. You're all for trading him. Brother Bob says, in short, ain't ish change with Kyle Levy. Kinda. Dave Barclay says, ding, ding, ding. Brother Bob is right again. Brother Bob says, Dave, fire Kyle Levy. Off with his head. Get to stepping. Gee, many Christmas, you guys. Dave says, BB, I already told you, all coach, you be the GM. Dave's Brother Bob says, Dave, yep, but I may fire you if you act like Kyle Levy. God, here they go again. Understood, but I can listen to others and stay humble. Coach, we had everything to win a Super Bowl except for a head coach or an OC.
That's real. Like, you know what I feel? Honestly, I feel like we're like, do you remember the scene? There's like an irony to why we're losing to Patrick Mahomes. And we're losing to the man that our coach didn't even scout. And not only are we losing to him, but we're losing to him for lack of preparedness. And it's like, I feel like in a way, our fate is intertwined with the greatness of Patrick Mahomes for that sin of not even scouting him. Like, you remember that
if we make the Super Bowl, we're going to play Kansas City again, no matter what.
Dude, do you remember that scene in Troy where Hector kills Patroclus, which is Troy's nephew, and he thinks he killed Achilles? And when Achilles goes to the gates, he takes off his helmet and he goes, now you know who you're fighting. And he goes, tonight, you're not going to have any ears. You're not going to have any nose. You're not going to have a tongue. And you're going to walk the underworld. And everybody's going to know that's Hector, the idiot who thought he killed Achilles. And it's like, that's who I feel. That's how I feel about our fate, bro. Like, I feel like we made a huge error by not even drafting that, by not even looking at this guy. And we just have to die. We have to die 10,000 deaths to pay our penance. You know what I mean? Like, we're the team that didn't scout Patrick Mahomes, who gets to lose to him. Like, it hurts, bro. It hurts.
It does. Jordan says, we need a DC who's not afraid to call Kyle out on his BS. Not overly argumentative, but calls him out. Also, Laken Tomlinson, get your butt back home. He is
Laken Tomlinson got released by the Jets.
I don't know if he can play the right side, though. I can't remember if he did. I feel like he did and wasn't very good at it and was much better on the left when he was in Detroit. But I'd have to go double check.
I think he did. Yeah, I think in Detroit, they put him on the right side. He was horrible at it. And then we put him at his original position here. And I feel the same way about Aaron Banks. He went to the right side and he was horrible at it. And then they had to put him at his original position.
It's not a transition that every player can make. It is a hard transition. Everything is opposite. It's literally like me saying, okay, now you write left-handed, or if you're left-handed, now you write right-handed. Okay, go. And I want your penmanship to be just as solid. Well, unless you're ambidextrous, like, no.
Well, I played center. I played O-Train. I played right tackle all the way to left. And it is harder on, based off the opposite hand that you write with to be on that side. But It really is just reps, to be honest with you, and it's technique. And once you get like the muscle memory down, you can work it. You really can, because the different side just challenges the balance of your body. So if you really don't like a certain side, it's like, get your ass in the weight room and get stronger. You know what I'm saying? So it could work, but I don't want to.
But a lot of times it's not going to happen over one off season, I guess is what I'm saying. If you're not comfortable with it, like it may take you a while to get there.
True.
For some people. And some people just can't do it. Some people are great at it. So I don't know. Dream says, feels like Kyle's last ride, even with his contract. I don't know about that. I think it's definitely this team is currently constructed. It's their last ride. And we'll see.
Kyle will be given the grace to reconstruct the team, I think.
I don't think Kyle's going anywhere. I think Jed York loves him way too much.
Yeah.
I hope.
Dude, that press conference is almost kind of like a Paul Revere moment. Like, it kind of outed just how much affinity he has for Kyle. Like, it was kind of disgusting. Like, it's like, Jesus Christ, get a room. You know what I mean?
I do want Jed to answer that question, though, that I think Ryan brought forth to, I think it was Ryan that brought it forth to Grant, saying, hey, please ask him this at the owners' meetings. Why did you say when you got rid of Harbaugh that we don't raise NFC championship banners? Is about raising Super Bowl banners and getting that Lombardi trophy. And if I don't get it, hold me accountable. What has changed? Why is it so different that you seemingly are okay with winning NFC championships? You said not only that they didn't even win the NFC championship, that it was a successful season. So what's
there?
Changed?
We go.
That's just the head coach. You like him more? Is that what it is?
That's taking it a step lower than what you originally said, Jed. I believe like the original quote was like champions don't hang up division banners. So it's like, my man, and he was walking around like the team mom, rubbing everybody on the bed. I got secondhand embarrassment. Jed gives me secondhand embarrassment. It does. Like, I just feel like, oh my God, he's so cringeworthy. He just makes me giggle. He's so weird. I don't understand, bro.
Moises says Kyle Shanahan equals a reverse Harbaugh situation for Jed. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of pointing to what we were just talking about. Brother Bob says, whatever, 2019 and 2023 were Wilkes' fault. Jeez. The Gold Rush says, in 2014, San Francisco was worth $1.4 billion. Since Kyle Shanahan has taken over, it's worth $6 billion. Kyle Shanahan is not going anywhere. York loves his money. Yeah, I mean, I think that's inflation in sports in general. And then the San Francisco 49ers brand, when it's a winning brand, is massive. It's absolutely massive. And you're right. I mean, ultimately, the sad thing is with most of these owners, it is about making money. It's turning a profit. They are businessmen, and that's what's happening. And that's when you hear a comment like, well, it used to be a lemonade stand, and now, you know what I mean? Now we've turned it into an actual business. That's not a comment because they were winning Super Bowls and you're not now. That was, hey, we've turned it into something profitable over here, and that's what we care about. So we know that. Official B&A Music says Kyle shouldn't be fired, but if we don't win a Super Bowl, can we get Cam Newton to swing around? You're wild, man. You always say the craziest things, dude. It's so funny.
I rock with B&A.
He's so funny. Dave says Coach is getting deep. I love it.
I just saw the parallel, bro.
Yeah. Harris says only Lombardi that ends up on Kyle's side is David.
You know what's so funny about that? Is that joke that's the first time I've ever heard that joke, but it's been lying on the surface for somebody to grab it forever. Somebody was like, so nobody's gonna pick up this $100 bill in the middle of the floor. Nobody. I'm thinking, okay.
Brother Bob says, Aaron, stop. It's so true. Dave says, so true. Jeebus says refs are unwilling to call offensive holding in a passing league because it's 10 yards and often a drive killer. Should it change to 5 yards? Thoughts? That's a great suggestion. I actually wish holding wasn't 10 yards. That's 10 yards is so egregious. 5 yards seems right. 5 yards seems right.
Well, the
I also
reason
like
why
the college football rule on pass interference as well. Not a spot
15-yard penalty.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I do like the spot foul for the 15 yards. I think we reward the offense way too much for PIs. That's one. I do like the 10 yards for holding because holding is the trenches is that's where the trenches are. And
you know what we should do? Actually, I got a better solution. I'm going to bring this up. You tell me your thoughts. So instead of 5 yards or 10 yards, let's figure out what the average sack distance is. Maybe that's 7 yards. So when a player takes a sack, maybe they on average lose 7 yards. That should be the penalty, whatever the league average is, because really what a holding is doing is trying to stop you from getting a sack. So the defense shouldn't be penalized for not being able to get the sack if they were held, but they should get the position that is the league average on that play. So whatever that is, and I don't know if you'll be able to find it now, I'm just saying in general, let's say it's 7 yards. The penalty should be what the league average is for a sack, which is 7 yards or whatever that number is. Maybe it's 9. I don't know. Who knows what it is?
All right, here's the basic data. 1 sack, blah, 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 between blah, 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 blah. 6.52 yards per sack in 1,903 occurrences between 0 and 48-yard loss means that 19.62 yards lost. So 6.5 yards per sack. So right over 5 yards.
So 7 yards. So 7 yards. The penalty should be 7 yards. There you go.
Well, wait a minute.
Why not?
You just judge, jury, and execution that whole thing.
Well, you round up.
It should be 7 yards.
You round up to 7. Where should it be? 6?
No, I think it should be 10. I think it should be what it is because
I'm muting you because you don't agree. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, no, but I'm gonna tell you why. The reason why I think that it should stay that way is because the penalty has to matter. You know, you can score, you know what I'm saying, on plays that are holding plays, you know, and a holding play absolutely puts the defense at a disadvantage. And what it does is that it keeps the architecture of the game like in frame. If you start playing around with like the penalties of like holding, then, you know, think about how people are going to start like playing with the rules where it's like, well, dude, it's 2nd and 8. It's 3rd and 8. We can get a hold here. You know what I'm saying? We're giving up 7 yards here. Like, I kind of wanted to stay at 10. But, you know, in the course of changing things, I understand where you're coming from.
Red Eye says 7's a weird-ass number. No. Who cares if it's a weird number?
Who said that? Thank you. Who said that?
Red Eye said it.
Thank you, Red Eye.
Who cares if it's a weird number?
It is a weird-ass number.
Pass interference can be weird numbers. 17 yards, 19 yards, 8 yards, 7. Like, you know what I mean?
Don't argue with Red Eye.
I also hate how defensive holding is an automatic first down. I hate that rule as well. I think that's garbage. 5 yards and an automatic first down. There's some rules that I would like to change.
Well, you do understand that literally everything's for the offense to score now.
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so you getting them to take the yards down on holding ain't happening.
Yeah, I know. All right. Jeebus says refs are. Oh yeah, that's what got us on this whole conversation.
Thank you.
Wolf
Jeebus.
Life says Kyle Shanahan needs to read Laws of Leadership, Law of Empowerment. Ooh, I might have to read that one.
I'm gonna get that too.
James Foster says, "Dang, Niner gang, such an elite one."
Dang, Niner gang.
Stupid. What it says? Kyle Shanahan in all of his glory. Let the Bucks lap him, getting a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. Let the Rams lap him, getting it with Stafford. The freaking Rams.
Yeah, he meant Tom Brady.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. All right, listen. Little bit of a different show. I enjoyed it. I like different formats. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed it too. Whether you agree, disagree, really beside the point. A little bit different format, like I said. We went 1 hour and 40. Appreciate each and every one of you in the chat. If you are here on my channel or on Coach's, make sure you drop a like and a subscribe. It's free and it helps the channels go a long, long way into reaching some of the success that we're chasing. Coach, as always, appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon. Everybody in the chat, peace. I'll be back tomorrow night.